The US under Trump's administration has been menacing India and other BRICS countries for quite some time now. And the latest one is with regard to the 25% tariff on goods imported from India, plus an unspecified penalty for buying Russian oil and weapons. What's more, Trump's administration has been working with Pakistan for striking a deal on exploration of oil reserves in Pakistan. Can you believe that? What an insult to India. Now, how should India retaliate and safeguard its interests? So, in today's video, we will be talking about the impact of Trump's warning and tariff, there is 25% tariff and unspecified penalty on India-US relations, all right? So how this Trump's administration and its activity is going to impact India. That is what we will be discussing, wherein we will be analyzing trade, economy, and geopolitical implications because of this action of Trump's administration, all right? This is useful for UPSC GS Paper 2 International Relations in answer writing. I'm an expert in answer writing. For introduction, I am Tarun V. Bhatt, Assistant Professor of Political Science and also coach for various competitive exams, and also I have a kind of grip in presenting beautiful answers for your mains. So if you have any queries with regard to answer writing, please drop in the comments. I will be happy to answer your queries. So moving on, the introduction part, what are the objectives of this particular video? The objective is to examine the current dynamics of India-US relations, right? Historically, what is the relation between India and US? That's what we'll be discussing in the beginning. And after that, we will be analyzing the implications of Donald Trump's recent warning on trade and economic relations. So how are we going to suffer, or how it is going to create troubles for India is what we'll be discussing. And then lastly, we'll be discussing about the broader impact on India's foreign policy and India's strategic interests. How do we understand India's foreign policy and how do we protect our interests? That will be the topic of discussion, which is very crucial for your UPSC mains paper 2 international relations. All right. So let's begin with the background of India-US relations, and let's begin with the historical context. It is always better that you start with the historical context. And historically, there has been good relationship between India and US, and it became strong since 1990s, particularly in defense technology and trade areas, right? And key areas of cooperation include defense cooperation, and under defense cooperation, you have various agreements and memorandums such as LEMOA, COMCASA, and BECA. So what is LEMOA? LEMOA means Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. And what is COMCASA? COMCASA stands for Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement, right? And then what is this BECA? Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement, right? These are the three important defense agreements that we have with the US, and it can come in prelims. It has already come in prelims. So please keep an eye on it. And then the next area of cooperation is trade relations, of course, and economic exchange. And then the next one is shared concerns over China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. You already know that China and India are the strong Asian countries, and US always tries to balance them. And that is why with India, they share concern over China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. And then the next area of cooperation is counterterrorism, of course, and regional security, right? These are the key areas of cooperation wherein India and US will be having discussions. So recent developments, Trump has been warning India. And what is the warning all about? It is about increasing trade imbalances with India and also threatening economic consequences. That means he's been threatening us of economic consequences if we continue to have this trade deficit with them, all right? So what is the trade deficit? How much is the statistical number? All that we'll be discussing. So the focus area of Trump's concern here is India's high tariff on US products. That means if US has to export their product to India, we're imposing very high tariffs according to Trump. And also he has concerns over our growing trade deficit. All right, this is another concern. And next, India's access to US markets being put at risk. So this is what he has been talking about in his social media. So why this matters? This matters because the US is India's second largest trading partner after China. So this is important for us. If US administration decides to put 25% tariff on us as a penalty and additional unspecified penalty for trading with Russia, this will create a lot of impact on our economy, right? And any disruption could severely impact India's economy, particularly in the manufacturing and tech sectors, right? And India exports its diamonds, gems, jewelries, petroleum products, iron and steel, plastics, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, spices, textiles, and many more products. So all these industries are at risk if Trump's administration decides to impose more and more tax on our goods which we export to India. Right? So what are the major goods that we export to US? The list is here. Please pause this particular slide and make a note of it. So trade imbalance is definitely there and it has created economic impact, and that is why Trump is so furious on India these days. So the key points of trade imbalance are as such. So exports versus imports. India faces large trade deficit with the US importing more goods than it exports. This is the concern that Trump has been pointing out. And then high tariffs that India imposes on their products like the Harley Davidson motorcycles and medical devices which they export to India. All right. And what is the impact on Indian economy because of this? See, potential tariffs or sanctions could affect Indian exporters, making goods less competitive in American market. This is why 25% imposition of tariffs on Indian goods is a cause of concern for us. And then reduced foreign investments in key sectors such as technology, pharmaceuticals, and manufacturing. So, if there is no much profit that uh, that investors enjoy in Indian market, then why would they come and invest in India, isn't it? So, key statistics include India US trade stood at 150 billion in 24-25. In the financial year 24-25, the trade between India and US stood at 150 billion US dollars, right? And the trade deficit is there, which is 45.7 billion US dollars. So if US is purchasing 100 billion worth of products from India, India is purchasing just 50 billion worth of products from the US. This is why Trump is so crazy about Indian tariff imposition and our trade deficits, right? So this naturally means US imports from India are significantly lower than the exports to India. So what are the geopolitical implications because of this? If there is a strain between India and US relations, how it is going to impact geopolitics is what we'll be discussing. See, so many strategic partnerships will be at risk. Number one is Indo-Pacific security. See, US values India as a counterbalance to China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region, all right? So the trade issues could affect defense cooperation and joint security efforts in the Indo-Pacific region. This is how geopolitical concerns arise. And then geopolitical shifts also can happen. What are the geopolitical shifts? Potential realignment of India's foreign policy if the US pursues hostile trade tactics. Because we need to change our foreign policy because we consider US as our friend. Now, if they act like our enemies, then we naturally will move into other countries and have more and more trade and technology partnerships with other countries, isn't it? India may turn to other partners like Russia or China for support affecting regional alliances. That's what I spoke about. And most importantly, India's economic reform agendas will change according to US stance, isn't it? Ongoing economic reforms in India is important for us to understand. Number one is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar means what? Self-reliance. A trade war with the US could disrupt India's domestic economic growth goals. That's number one. Number two is the government's efforts to attract FDI. FDI is foreign direct investment may suffer, particularly in the manufacturing sector, if US is hostile towards India and imposes tariffs. Right? And impact on key sectors are number one is tech and startups, potential decline in the US venture capital flowing into Indian tech startups. This is the number one impact. And number second impact is manufacturing and pharma sector. Key sectors like automobiles and pharmaceuticals, which are dependent on US exports, could face significant challenges. All right. Next, because of this trade war between India and US, what could be the potential outcome? See, it is important in international relations that we predict various scenarios and be ready for it. So, I have predicted two scenarios in this strained relationship between India and US. Scenario number one: US imposes trade sanctions or tariffs, which it has already done, 25% tariffs plus unspecified penalty. It has gone forward from August 1, 2025, right? So what could be the impact of this particular scenario which has already taken place? So what can happen? See, short-term impact on Indian exports, particularly in sectors like agriculture, automobiles, and medical devices, which are our major exports to the US, correct? So short-term impact is going to happen, and long-term economic impact on India's competitiveness in global markets. This is what is the impact of imposition of tariff by the Trump's administration. And then what is the next scenario? Scenario number two: diplomatic engagements to resolve the disputes. Suppose India leverages its strong diplomatic ties to de-escalate tensions and reach a balanced agreement. Now, if this takes place, then naturally focus could be on reducing trade barriers and encouraging US investments in India. This is another possible scenario that can take place if US takes back its 25% tariff that it has imposed as a penalty. So US India is not just about trade relationship, there is defense cooperation as well. So the US and India share strategic defense ties, including joint military exercises, technology exchanges, and defense partnerships. And how it would impact on security cooperation, if you ask me. See, if trade tensions escalate, there may be slowdown in defense technology transfers, which would hinder India's military modernization. And another area of impact is energy and technology. Energy cooperation: India's access to US energy resources, including clean energy, could be impacted. And technology transfers, that is, US India collaboration in space, information technology, and artificial intelligence, could face hurdles. Now let's see what are the long-term impact on India's foreign policy. Number one is strategic autonomy and global influence. So what is this? India's strategic autonomy may come into question if it is forced to choose between its economic interests with the US and other international partnerships. Suppose India chooses to have trade relationship with the US and have negotiations with the US and ignores Russia. What could be the potential damage you can imagine, isn't it? That's what I'm talking about. Long-term damage is severe, and long-term damage could be seen in India's soft power as well and global influence as well. Suppose you give more and more preference to US and you're not having a good relationship with Russia or China for that matter, then this is going to impact India's soft power and India's ability to influence the globe as a whole. Or on the other hand, diversification of partners can also be the scenario. India could deepen ties with Russia, Japan, and European nations as it looks to diversify its foreign relations away from any dependence on the US. This also could be a possibility. This also could be the long-term impact on India's foreign policy. Now, in this critical situation where US is turning hostile towards India, how should India maneuver its policies is important, and what are the options that are available on India's table for the benefit of India. Let's look into it. See, possible policy responses for India. Number one, diplomatic measures. Without diplomacy, you cannot have international relations. First is engagement. Engagement is very important, and most importantly, India should engage in high level talks with US policymakers to address concerns and avoid trade wars. This is important. And then multilateralism is also important. India could use multilateral forums like the WTO, that is World Trade Organization, to address trade imbalances and push for fairer trade agreements. These are the diplomatic moves that India can pursue and must pursue. Domestic economic measures are there as options. Number one is reducing dependence on US imports. India could focus on reducing tariffs and boosting domestic manufacturing under Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. And next is enhancing trade with other nations, strengthening ties with the European Union, Asian countries, and other emerging markets. So, what are the key takeaways from this discussion? Number one is India US relations are at a critical juncture with Trump's warning potentially triggering a shift in trade and diplomatic dynamics. Number two is the economic and geopolitical fallout of trade dispute could have far-reaching consequences for India's strategic interests and economic recovery post-pandemic. And number three is India's approach to managing this issue must be pragmatic, that is practical, involving strong diplomacy, diversification of global partnerships, and strengthening domestic reforms. And lastly, the road ahead requires balancing economic and geopolitical priorities, ensuring that India remains a strong global player in a rapidly changing world. Now, after deep diving into India US relations from multidimensional perspectives, considering the latest actions of the Trump government, let us look at how UPSC can frame questions in the GS Paper 2 International Relations area. The question could be like this: how should India safeguard its interest considering hostility of Trump's administration towards India? Critically analyze. Will you be able to criticize in a constructive way and analyze the situation critically and come out with possible actions that India should take in order to safeguard its interest? That is what is the demand of the question, and you should be able to answer it within 300 words. You should give a solid introduction, and then there should be a nice body as per the demand of the question, that is critical analysis part, and then the conclusion, which should always be futuristic, which should always be progressive from Indian perspective. This is what UPSC expects. So, what do you think about India US relations given this current delicate situation? Do let me know your views in the comment box below. This is Tarun V. Bhatt signing off. Dhanyawad. Namaskar.